Hey, beautiful friends. Welcome to the energy report for not only October, but Q3. Can you believe? No, Q4. Q4, can you believe that we are in the final quarter of 2023 already? How? I feel like this year has absolutely flown by. I remember feeling that way last year, and this year is just crazier. And I'm hearing people talk about it who are not awake. Like, people are feeling the difference in the way that time is passing. There is a quickening upon us for sure. And we're in October. It's wild. Here we are. Not gonna lie, this is the quarter I've been dreading. And this is maybe the energy report I've been dreading the most. Although now that we're in October, I mean, it could be aided by the weather. Here in Ontario, Canada, we're getting beautiful weather, finally. I feel like we're finally getting summer this week. And that could be changing my feeling about everything. Could be changing my overall mood. But, #mood. But, now that we're in October, it doesn't feel as scary as the cards would let on. So we'll see. Let's get into it. I'm not entirely sure what's going to come through in this energy report, TBH. I just hit go live and here I am, and we're going to feel the messages come through in real time. So the card for the whole entire fourth quarter of the year is a major arcana card, everybody's favorite. Death. Good times, good times. The Death card. One of the reasons that I always use this deck, it is the Moonchild Tarot by Danielle Noel. She's an incredible artist. She has a series of tarot decks and oracle decks, and she worked with Rebecca Campbell for the Work Your Light and Starseed oracle decks. I just love her art so much. People always ask me what deck I use. So that is it, the Moonchild Tarot. And I love it because her art is so beautiful. So you see this death card and you see the, symbols of death. Like we have the butterfly and the moth, which are representing sort of the non-finality of death, that there is you're just changing form. It's energy and consciousness changing form. And then we also have this beautiful figure in the middle who is in this total state of grace, like she's dancing with the energy of death that is just part and parcel of this realm at this time, right? I don't know if it was originally designed to include death in the way that we experience it now. I don't believe that it was. But there was always going to be a transformation of energy and the ability to release yourself from physical form. I mean, when it was originally designed, physicality was not as dense as we've been experiencing it to be either. I do feel confident. I'd like to say I know that, but I mean, I know based on my Akashic explorations, I know that. But right now we experience death in the way that we do. And there is no avoiding it. It simply is what it is. And there's something to be said with being able to dance with those energies and in grace and surrender in the allowance of this transformation to occur. So for the whole final quarter of this year, the message is death. And death can obviously be a whole number of things. We're very quick to assume that it is physical death, like our actual mortality, and it is sometimes that, and it is also ego death, the transformation of our consciousness. And like anybody who's been through an ego death, you know that it is no fucking joke. Like, it is pretty horrendous. It's a pretty horrendous experience. It's very hard to experience the death of a layer of your ego, and the desperate attempt to hold on to who we thought we were, and a fear of who we will find out that we actually have been all along. It's a very intense process. And of course, it does not escape me that we are leading into, the thinning of the veil season. I feel it so strong this year. I kind of have a suspicion that it's going to keep getting thinner and thinner every single year because it seems to have been trending that way. I feel like every year I'm like, the veil is so thin. thin, but I literally feel it even thinner every single year. This year feels, it feels like the space between the time stacks. Like, so in a lot of ways, time is stacked upon itself like a stack of sticky Post-it notes, you know, like, and you could flip through it and see the whole human story unfold. So, you know, previous decades are stacked in the same space on top of each other. So what I mean by that is, I remember, like, I used to have trippy experiences with time when I was in my 20s, and I felt like I was so unhinged and I was going crazy, but turns out I was just going through a spiritual awakening. And I remember walking by an old apartment of mine on Havelock Street in Toronto. I think it was number 6 Havelock, I think. And, you know, I had maybe not lived there for a year or 2 years. Like, it was a fairly short interval of time, but it was more than months anyways. And it was measurable in years. And I remember walking by that apartment, maybe it was like 3 years. Regardless, I walked by it and I knew that if I walked in that door, I would find myself still living there. I would find my 21-year-old self still living there, even though I would also find the new tenants. It was just this crazy feeling. It reminds me of, I think it's the 3rd Harry Potter, Prisoner of Azkaban, where Hermione is fucking around with the time changer thing. I can't remember what it's called anymore, but you know what I mean? She was trying to like take an extra class load so she would, or an extra course load so she would change time so that she could be in 2 courses at once. And the rules were, do not let your past self see your future self because it will cause a fragmentation of your psyche. It was that kind of a feeling, but it was before I had seen or read The Prisoner of Azkaban. I don't even know if it was out at that point. It was probably in book form, but regardless, I had no awareness of it. I was just walking by my apartment and I could feel myself in there. I could feel that time stack. I could feel my former roommates in there. And I was like, don't go in. Don't. It's gonna mess with you if you see it. So there are these time stacks, and we all exist in the same space on Earth as we understand it, but the time stacks they're stacked on top of each other, if that makes sense. And the I don't know, whatever thing it is, whatever barrier separates the time stacks so that we're not all experiencing this all the time, so that we can be dialed into our currently manifested moment, whatever that is, whatever filter that is decreasing. I think it has more to do with our consciousness and less to do with the structure of reality, but the structure of reality is our consciousness. So it's all one thing. So to me, this year, the veil feels supremely thin. And I feel like a lot of people are going to have major activations of their psychic abilities, particularly this month, but through the entire quarter. But kicking off this month, I don't know if you can say kicking off. I mean, like, again, these energies don't obey the calendars. I'm just doing a monthly energy report because we live by a calendar. But some of you might have been experiencing these major psychic activations through the entire year, or we certainly had a lot last year, or maybe it started in the summer. Regardless, for the purposes of this energy report, this final quarter feels like it's going to be one of a lot of awakenings, further awakenings. Even if you feel like you're already awakened, I'm kind of mentally prepared for another like massive deep dive into the dregs of our collective unconscious, pulling out new treasures. Just a huge sort of like jailbreaking of our consciousness from the structures of our society and the way that those keep our consciousness sort of like relegated to a certain beta brainwave bandwidth, you know? I was just going to say something, and I feel like I'm having so many brain farts lately. It's ridiculous. I don't know. I'm sure it'll come back to me. So the death card, I don't want to try and tune into what that means, because there is a part of me that is afraid that it's going to involve a lot of death. Although I know that even if it does involve a lot of death, it's okay. I know that death is not the end, like physical, actual death, like the end of incarnations. I know that death is not the end. I know that the amount of death that happens is going to be proportionate to the increase in consciousness that becomes available to us. You know, it's almost like a bunch, if it does manifest in incarnations ending, a bunch of souls will be kind of deciding that they're going to check out of the game at this point, so that a lot of the drag that is caused by each of us on the collective consciousness level is released. Like the tethers, the trauma, the stories, the drama, all the things that kind of drag us, that's going to be released by their decision to leave this incarnation and open up a whole bunch of movement and freedom within our expanded individual and collective consciousness. So I know it won't be a bad thing. But the reason I don't want to tune into it is because I know that we who stay behind experience death in a very painful way, and we experience it through loss and grief and the perception of ending, and that's very hard. And I also don't want to fill anybody with fear. I'm just cognizant that any portents of massive death is a very serious thing, and I just don't want to implant that in your psyche. So what I want to say is I have intentionally not tuned into what this death card means because I don't want to know. So I am absolutely not saying that a bunch of people are going to die, or that we're going to see a bajillion natural disasters or any of that kind of stuff. I don't know. I don't want to know. I would really much rather allow it to play out and then debrief on the other side. That's how I feel about it. So moving on from the death card into the card for October, we have another major arcana card, and this one is, I would say, more stressful to me than the death card. It is, as I said in my year ahead tarot reading where I initially pulled all these cards, this is probably my least favorite card of the whole entire tarot deck. It is the moon. So the moon stresses me out because to me, what it represents is like the dark night of the soul. It ain't no mini dark night of the soul. It is the dark night of the soul. The thing about the moon card is that it's talking about a period of darkness wherein we have no idea how long it's going to last. And we also feel very disoriented. The moon is very changeable, as we know. It literally waxes and wanes. And there is even like a few nights every single moon cycle where it's a new moon and the moon isn't visible in the night sky at all whatsoever. And so those nights are the darkest nights. And then the nights where the moonlight is available, it's not even its own light. Like it is not a source of unique light. It is simply reflecting the light of the sun. So the light that it offers is, number one, a reflection that's going to involve some amount of distortion. And it's also not, it's like sort of, it's there. And we're thankful when we can see at all, but it's not enough to truly see. The dark night of the soul is a period where, like I said, you don't know how long it's going to last. You don't know anything, and that's what makes it really hard, is that feeling of like, I don't know anything. I don't know who I am. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know where to move. I don't know what to do. I don't know how long this is going to last, and it's a fertile ground for all of our inner fears to come up to be seen. that's really what the moon card is talking about, which is why it's not my favorite. And luckily I seldom ever pull it, but I did pull it for us this year. So before I hit go live, I did tune in a little bit just to get like a general gist, now that we're in October, of what this is really bringing forward for us, what the month feels like, what it's going to be. And what it feels like is a lot of people waking up all at once and waking up in a very painful way. Like very, very, which is, I mean, it could be that the death card is talking about literal waves of actual incarnations ending. I don't know. Or it could just be ego death. Like, I don't know what's going to trigger this in the external narrative, but something is going to trigger a lot of people to wake up, and almost like they're going to, some of us got to wake up by like getting interested in astrology and interested in oracle cards and crystals. And, you know, that's the initial experience of our awakening. And then we got guided into the dark night of the soul, where we are humbled beyond words and, you know, kind of brought to our knees in the darkness and the void space. But it feels to me like the people who are waking up this quarter, and I guess in this month, are going to be going right into the dark night of the soul. So there's not going to be that little like, ooh, crystals are cool kind of phase. It's going to be like existential crisis to the max. Yeah, that's how it feels. Now I know that we are now officially in eclipse season. I believe that in tropical astrology, it is along the Aries Libra axis. In Vedic astrology, it is along the Pisces Virgo axis. I don't really know what any of this means to us, but I do know that eclipses reveal a lot, so I'm sure it's going to be intense, and that's going to be part of it. Also, I just recently heard about some weird fucking broadcasts that are supposed to come out on October 4th, which to me sound like a whole bunch of fear. It just sounds like fear mongering. We'll see. But like every single time we have been given like a date of like, oh my God, this thing's going to happen this day, or this financial devastation is going to happen, or they're going to turn on this broadcast, blah, 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 blah. It hasn't happened. Like this big worldwide global impacting event. Like none of that has happened since the good old Coco Row. So I have my doubts personally. I believe that they're seeding the collective narrative with a whole bunch of like, sort of like fear, like beware, constantly stay in survival mode, try and stay one step ahead of the elites kind of energy that I don't think really serves any of us. So there could be things that are actually going to happen and to trigger this mass awakening, but it could just be, again, that more people awaken, and that the farther we get into this, the more intense it becomes. So one thing I do understand is we're going to see more extremes of polarization, and that can feel really hard to hear because it seems like we've gotten a lot of extremes of polarization over the last handful of years, but it's sort of like, it's because that's the theme that we are breaking through. We have been, so here in this realm at this time, we have been playing out very polarizing binary themes and binary stories. So it's always Democrat versus Republican, liberal versus conservative, red pill versus blue pill. You know, there's all men versus women, the rich versus the poor. Like there's always this like it's like a ping pong, it's just fucking eternal ping pong back and forth between these two polarities. And I don't know about you, but I'm done with it. And furthermore, I know that it is not the actual true sort of like fundamental creation code of this realm. I know that the true creation code is the Trinity. going onto Nikola Tesla, because everybody knows about him now, he said that thing about 3, 6, and 9. There's a reason. It's because the Trinity is the thing. The Trinity is the true code. What it is masculine, feminine, child. Mother, father, I said masculine, feminine, father, mother, child. And by child, I don't mean like human child. Like if you're somebody that's offended by like breeders and breeding topics and whatever, know that I'm not talking about like we should all now reproduce and have babies. That's not what I mean at all. I mean, there is a divine masculine principle, a divine feminine principle. They come together and create something new. That's what is the actual code of this reality. You can see it plainly everywhere. It's not a binary. The binary is a destructive concept that just keeps us trapped with no exit, just constantly ping-ponging back and forth or swinging like a pendulum back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It's maddening. And so as we break free from this, it's like the polarities become more pronounced and more distinct, and we have to process them. And we have to remember that we are the Trinity. Each of us is the Trinity complete. You are the divine child. You are the divine child of the divine Father and the divine Mother. And you are the chooser. You are the third one. So in every situation where it's like, let's just take politics because it's an easy example. There's Democrat and Republican because most of y'all are American. So rather than getting hung up on the extreme left or the extreme right or just the left or just the right, it's like staying centered in yourself and remembering that you are the chooser. You are the chooser. You are the third perspective. It's all alive within you. The power is all you. You don't have to be pulled back and forth all the time between like identifying yourself with this side or that side or whatever. Like that's all just, it's a long con, and it's time for the con to be over. And as we are seeing it become more and more extreme, the medicine is to remember that you are the Trinity. You are the Trinity complete. You are the child. You are the chooser. You're the third vantage point. And that you can be in your center and be the unifying force for all of the illusion of these extreme polarities. So yeah, straight up, I think we're going into a rough quarter. Not gonna lie. I think there's going to be a whole shit ton of magic. So I also don't want to scare you, but what I've been seeing for a while is that as we awaken, there's almost a process to it that's like a life review. And I mean, we've all been talking about shadow work and all that for a long time, right? Like the need to do our shadow work. The need to process our trauma, the need to see our shadow, the need to see all that is in our unconscious. And I feel like the people who are awakening for the first time now are going to be taken right into that life review, right into the shadow and into, it's almost like they're going to awaken so rapidly to the fact that this is all a dream, that they are suddenly going to see with intense clarity the folly of their ways, and they are going to feel like deep remorse and deep regret and confusion though too, because the ego is designed to protect you from those feelings so that you can carry on being alive. So then the ego is also going to be like, quick, I have to split, I have to fragment so that you can't see this part of yourself that you haven't been accepting. It's just going to be a lot. Like probably people are going to really question like, what relationship have I got into? What job have I gotten into? Like, what am I doing? Who am I? What is my life? And it's going to be very unsettling for them in a way that they're not really psychologically prepared to handle. At which point, we're all going to be able to assist them and just help them navigate it, help them walk through it, and just really hold a lot of compassion for them in our hearts. A lot of space for them as they acknowledge parts of themselves that are less than desirable or possibly even unsavory, and do so with as little judgment as possible. With the remembering that, like, we're all fragments of one cohesive whole. It doesn't feel cohesive right now at our level of the human consciousness, but we are all fragments of one whole. So every time that we can hold compassion for somebody who's going through an intense awakening process, and basically like lay down all of our keyboard warrior stuff, and like lay down the what's it called, like the temptation to be like, I told you so, or I was right this whole time, or just the temptation to even take sides. Like, we can be that neutralizing factor that allows, basically that's what I'm trying to get at. We can each be the neutralizing factor that allows those polarities to start to remember themselves and reintegrate back into one being. It's in that third vantage point. It's in the remembering that we are each the Trinity complete. We are the divine child. And so the extreme polarities are the illusion of separation, and they are falling apart, and they are vibrating even more loudly, and they're making even more noise than ever before. And we don't have to get swept up in that. We can just hold within ourselves an axis of being centered and being accepting of all pieces. Accepting is not the same as condoning. I'm not talking about condoning choices and behaviors that were performed unconsciously that are, not in alignment with honoring all of creation. But we can accept the souls. We can accept consciousness. We can accept that this has all been a dream, and the dream belongs to all of us. It belongs to each of us individually and all of us together. And we don't have to push away or condemn any part of the dream. We can just accept it all and unify it within ourselves, thus lightening the load for everybody who's newly awakening. I think for a lot of us light workers, to be honest, I mean, I'm preparing myself mentally for a new level of awakening within myself, because I'm not going to be so arrogant as to assume that I am above this wave of awakening and that it won't affect me, and I'm so awakened that there's no awakening left for me, because that's just not, I've been proven wrong on that so many times, so I'm not even going to bother anymore. But I do think that for a lot of us who have been on this path for any length of time and have been really present with ourselves, we probably are not going to experience it as individually, and probably not in a way that is as distressing for us as it will be for others who are newly awakened. And so I think that for a lot of us who would consider ourselves light workers, using any terminology, I'm just going to use the umbrella term of light worker, we are going to feel like we're being called on to do a lot of energy work, a lot of work for a lot of people. But that's what we're here for. We are the cleanup crew. That's what we're here for. And I also have a feeling that, at least for myself personally, that probably the experience that I went through over the summer, which was very humbling and very painful and very hard, was my preparation for this. So again, I'm not suggesting that I'm not going to go through any awakening, and I will keep you abreast of any developments, but that I kind of, like, when I look at it, I'm like, oh, the death card, right. That is why I went through an intense death and grief portal over the summer. Is just almost like I tend to feel the energy ahead of time and process it ahead of time, and then it manifests. And that may be true for many of you, which is why I'm mentioning it. So yeah, I feel like this is, we're no longer in the practice run. Like, probably this quarter is going to be a lot of heavy energy work for us. And yet that is what we have come for. That's what we are prepared to do. That's why we have these abilities. That's probably also why so many of our psychic gifts are going to come online. And so much understanding of the true nature of reality is going to come online so that we can navigate this as effectively as possible. I think that's what I've got to say about the month of October and Q4 of 2023. Now, just a sneak peek. November and December, the cards that were pulled for November and December definitely look better. Like, this feels like the peak intensity. October, we'll see how it plays out. Like I said, right now it's hot out, the sun is shining. I'm gonna take my kids to the beach again tomorrow. Like, I'm just feeling greatness in my life. So it's weird to talk about these things, but of course I know that as we edge on, especially towards the end of the month, the 30th, 31st, and 1st of November, and that real thinning point in the veil, we'll probably be singing a different tune by then. Right now, it's like maybe we're going to get to wade in rather than get pushed into the deep end. That's my hope anyway. But yeah, that's what I got for you for October. Let me know what you think in the comments and how it lands with you. I would love to hear. I'm sure I'll be back to talk about a lot more about all of this. I have been getting so many messages about how we are going to be suddenly remembering our galactic aspects, a lot of our starseed aspects, about our, like I said, our psychic gifts coming online, the need to hold people through dark nights of the soul and hold ourselves through dark nights of the soul. And I have no doubt that I'll be here talking much more about all of that. So all of these themes will be expanded upon, I'm sure. But for now, I will let you go and carry on with your day. Thank you so much for being here. I love you so much, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye.